podcast. I am your host, Audrey Neff, and I am very excited about today's guest. So today's guest is the one and only Dr. Jennifer Levine. So a lot of you all probably already know who she is. She's incredible, but a little bit about her before we jump into today's episode. So she is an award-winning facial plastic surgeon and is one of the few who is double board certified by the American Board of Facial Plastic and Reconstructive Surgery and the American Board of Otolaryngology Head and Neck Surgery. She's been featured in Forbes, Elle, Vogue, Wall Street Journal, Bravo, Good Morning America. There were more on your website, Jen, but I only took those ones. And more. She speaks, she trains globally for some of the top aesthetic companies, including Merz, Benev, many more, lectures globally and internationally as well. And I am so excited to have her on the True to Form podcast today. So Dr. Levine, welcome to the show. Honored to have you.
Thank you so much, Audrey, for inviting me. I'm really excited to do this.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I know that there's a ton of stuff that we could go in today, so we'll certainly just see where the wind takes us. So before we jump in, and I'm sorry, what was that?
No, I said, let's see
Okay.
what's happening.
Awesome. Yeah, we will. So before we jump in, something I like to do just for all of the guests that come on is I like to start just with a little bit of background, just so our audience can get to know you a little bit better if they don't know your who you are or perhaps your journey into aesthetics. So at a somewhat high level, I guess, but you could go into as much detail as you would like. I think it'd be cool to hear what led you into aesthetics and kind of what led you into opening your own private practice. So just a little bit of background on what landed you in this industry.
Yeah, so it's so funny because I had a patient just the other day and she asked me that question, so I guess I'm a little bit prepared. So I think it started when I was a little girl, is that I really like to draw and I really like to sketch primarily the face. So I did a lot of like art classes and I actually grew up in Brooklyn. So if I ever wanted to go into the city or do something else, I would have to be on the bus or subway. I would kind of like sketch the person across from me and then kind of like fix their face a little bit. So a little bit of like of drawing like Photoshop, but with a sketch. So I was always kind of doing that. And then as I went through school, I really liked, the precision and accuracy of math and science. So I was trying to think of like what could I do that would involve like art and science and math and kind of be both like technical and artistic. And that's how I came up with the idea that I wanted to be a doctor and a surgeon and kind of focus on aesthetics because it was something that I think was deeply ingrained in me, was very meaningful to me. And obviously, when you are, a healthcare provider, you know that you have a purpose in life. So the idea that it was helping people, that I would never be like, oh, why did I do this? And also fulfilled me on, an intellectual level and artistic level. So that's kind of how I came to be.
I love it. And it's funny to hear people's stories and how they start out, because obviously now you're this like renowned facial plastic surgeon, and to see where it kind of stemmed from. I thought this was really cool. Like you were a little girl in Brooklyn and you would, ride the subway train, whatever, and sketch people's faces and then fix it.
Yeah.
I love that.
I started young.
That's awesome. And it's cool that I just love hearing how people came to like what were their drivers and these little characteristics that they had that led them into the profession that they're now in, which is obviously medical aesthetics and plastic surgery for you, which is awesome. So when it comes to, so obviously that's kind of what led you into, becoming a physician and a surgeon. What were some of the drivers behind like you opening your own practice and your own business? Because that's a huge leap for a lot of people, and it's definitely it can be a risk in some cases as well.
Yes. So I guess one of the other things that I realized when I was doing all of my training, I did so many years of training, is that I kind of wanted things to be the way I envisioned them in my head. And I realized very early on that things were unlikely to be the way that I wanted them to be unless I made my own practice. So it was not an easy journey, and I didn't start out with my own business, but I was fortunate in the sense that when I went into practice, I was renting space from the chairman of my department, but I wasn't his employee. So I kind of was starting out with my own practice, and then I didn't obviously have enough income to support myself or my I had one daughter at the time, so I had to like take some like odd jobs. So I like worked in like the clinic at Manhattan Eye and Ear. I would take call, so I was able to supplement my income and then gradually build up my practice. But I knew like deep down that's where I wanted to be, and I didn't want to like start out on the wrong foot. So it was something that I knew was important to me. So I did whatever was necessary to do that.
I love it, and that's awesome. And it's yeah, it's definitely it's stepping stones to get there in some cases. And I think a lot of people sometimes from the outside looking in think it's a lot easier than it really is. And it's a very complex industry when you do own your own practice that has, both non-invasive services and surgical services. It's a very complex business to run. And obviously, you said something about it at the beginning when I first asked you, but you basically wanted to control your own destiny is kind of how I take that. So how long has your practice been in business now, and how many team members do you have today?
So have been in this office since 2008. So, and originally I was renting space from someone else, and then I bought this office from her in like 2015, and then I bought the office across the hall and I put an OR, and that was more in like 2020, 2021, and then until I finished that reservation 2022. So it certainly has been a process, and yeah, so however many years that is. So it's been yeah.
Been a decent amount of time. And so you have your own private OR now, is that
Yes,
correct?
my own or yes.
That's awesome. And I feel
Yeah.
like that can even be a differentiator in a lot of cases. So
Yes.
like I assume you use that a lot with patients is, if you come to me, I take this so seriously. I have my own OR that I operate in that's right here across the
Yes.
hall.
Yes. Yes. So it's right here across the hall. So there's like we have three team members that are just associated with the OR, and then we have another one, five or six people involved in the daily
Yeah.
um,
That's awesome. So
ongoing.
you have a good team around you. So if we go into like the inner workings of your practice now, there was a couple of things I specifically wanted to pick your brain on. The
Yes.
first things I wanted to go through are kind of on the branding, marketing, PR side of things, because you do a really, really good job at
Thanks.
branding yourself and credentialing yourself. And, you have so much you're everywhere, and you obviously don't start there. You build that up over time, but I know that's something that I'm sure a lot of aspiring physicians or owners in the space want to get to one day. So I did want to pick your brain about this. So when it comes to, if we want to start on, let's start on social media first, and then I want to move to kind of PR. On the social side, like social media is something we all talk about every single day. I know you talk about it a lot. You're on panels and all of that. What got you into doing your social media, and do you do it yourself, or do you have someone in house that helps you with curating and editing content and things like that?
So right now we do have someone who's in-house who really does that. And I've tried it like every which way. I've tried to do it myself. I've tried to have like outside people, but I found that, social media is about having an authentic voice. And for me, it's really hard for someone who isn't with me every day to know what my voice is, or to be able to kind of say what that is. And I think that someone put it to me very well, is like social media is really like a conversation. So it's not only what you're putting out there, it's your willingness to engage with other people. So I think that's what it's about. It's about a conversation. And I think what many people don't realize, or maybe many people do, is a lot of people actually go to social media as for research, to learn. So where people maybe used to just ask friends or just go to the internet, people actually go to TikTok or to Instagram if they want to search something or learn about something. And having people know what you stand for and kind of what you're about and get to know you before they come in, I think is very powerful. And even for your current patients, I mean, my current patients will be like, oh, I know I've been following you. I know what you're up to. I feel like I'm like kind of caught up with what you're doing, which is a very interesting way, but it allows people to participate, which I think is really fun. Uh, it's not only fun, but I think it's helpful. It lets some people be engaged in the practice. And it's not just about me. I think it's also about my team and the people who are here and the experience in the office and letting them know a little bit more about what that's about, because it isn't just me, it's really everybody that I work with as well, and that type of experience. So I think that's important to convey as well.
Yeah, I love that. And I love first of all, I agree with everything that you said 110%. And this is something that a lot of people do struggle with. And I like that you put it as social media is you need to have an authentic voice. And that is so true. And I think that's something that a lot of people overlook is, and they do try to outsource social media. And just like you said, you brought someone in-house because you're like, if they are going to work with me on social media, they need to be with me on a regular basis so that they understand who I am, so that they can
Right,
speak in the voice that you want them to speak in.
right, absolutely.
Yeah. And I love also what you said is that consumers come to social media when they start researching now. And that is so true. And actually, this is a stat I have in one of the courses I teach, but there was I think it was from an Allergan 360 report actually a couple of years back, but it was like 83% of millennials now, which is 28 to 43, actually go to Instagram specifically
Yeah,
when they start researching aesthetic treatments. Like
yes.
83%, I'm sure if they redid that survey now, it would be a lot higher. So like it's a no-brainer. You have to be on social media. So when it comes to content creation, obviously there's content that works and there's content that doesn't work. Something I've noticed, and I want you to go into detail on this, is when I look at like even your Instagram, like you have a very educational approach to social media and you do it in a very, very authentic but sophisticated manner. So what type of content like do you typically prioritize in the practice of creating?
So I think we primarily are going to talk about things that I feel like I want my patients to know. It could be about a trend, it could be about a procedure. I do not tend to uh, like I think I went to this. I do a lot of speaking, and one of these like speaking things they said, when you're starting like a talk or a presentation, you need to like break the ice, and you could one of the things that you could do is you could tell a joke, but you don't tell a joke if you're not funny. Like, I'm not a comedian, so my social media, it could be lighthearted, I could be smiling, but I'm not like particularly like funny and like, oh, like a cutesy or whatever. Like, that's not my personality, that's not who I am. So I'm going to have to stick to a topic that's like educational and or informative, because that's who I am as a person and that's what resonates with me. So I think you have to figure out, like, if you are funny, then it's great to be funny. I have lots of friends who are funny, and that works really well for their social media, but I'm not that type of person. So it would come across as kind of like insincere, so because I don't do that. I don't make jokes. I might tell stories. I can, we can have fun with things, but I'm not going to make it into like I'm not going to be doing weird things or putting on weird hats, or it's just not me. So that I think that's what's important. But I think for me, we actually like did a little exercise in our office where we had to like come up with words that kind of what we felt like described us, and then at the end of this exercise there were like 4 or 5 words that we had all resonated with, and those are kind of like our pillars or what we stand for. So when we look at social media, we have to say, like, does this represent like who we are? And if it doesn't, then it's not something that we want to put out on social media if it doesn't really reflect, something that's important to us.
Yeah.
So obviously, like education, innovation, those are things that are important to me and to my team. So our social media content is going to reflect that.
Yeah, I love that. And I want to go back to some things that you said because I find them to be very, very important that I want everyone to take away is what you mentioned is sticking to who you are like at your core as a human being. And actually it's funny because that's why I named this podcast True to Form is we should all stay true to form in whatever,
Right,
in who we are as
right,
human beings. And so, and that's something that everyone needs to think about too is you don't have to be funny. Just like you said, if that's not, the type of person you are and you'd rather be really educational and get really,
right.
down and gritty about that stuff, then focus on that and your patients will love you for that
Exactly.
because at the end of the day, your vibe attracts your tribe. So being who you are is going to attract the patients that you want to naturally attract. And something I love about this industry is we can all have success on social media in different ways. So like if we look at, for instance, your Instagram, very beautiful, sophisticated, professional, very, very educational. You post wonderful before and after photos and you've had great success. And then it's funny because even if we compare that to, one of our friends, Dr. Sheila Barbarino, her Instagram is the opposite, right? She just
Right.
wants to order costumes on Amazon and do funny memes
Right, and
and
then she's so good at it, and she does those dances. Like that is just like not something that like I could never even do. I think during COVID there was like that time where everyone was doing those like TikTok dances, and they were kind of like viral. Like that was like not for me. I remember doing them at home with my daughter, my younger daughter, who's actually like a pretty good dancer, and she's like, no, she's like, we cannot post that. We were trying to figure out, when we started or whichever hand motions. It's just like it's just not my thing. But yes, but I and as and Sheila Dr. Barberina will say to me, she's like, "Do you think it's like too much? Is this?" I'm like, "No, this is like who you are, what you enjoy doing, and it's not over the top because the people who are coming to you, that's what they want to see." But that's not my brand, so I do not do those. Although I think they're great, and I love watching them.
I know, I love it. She does crack me up. But I think that that's something positive that we can take away because I know a lot of people, and I know a lot of people that listen to this podcast, they struggle with social media. So something that I think it can be a positive takeaway from this is you just need to figure out what what works for you and then double down on that. So just like, Dr. Levine said, Dr. Barberino is very different. Like that's her style. You don't really see a lot, some educational videos she's been doing, which is great to see. And she always sometimes like asks me for her feedback on them, and I'm like, yeah, that's great, post it. But I think that's a good takeaway. Is everyone truly just needs to stay true to their own form in who they are. As it relates to social media, something else I wanted to pick your brain about is obviously with the emergence of influencers and TikTok and all of these, I don't want to say misinformation, but kind of stuff that goes around the internet of influencers promoting things that are not necessarily from a medical professional, things that you would never want to your patients to be using. And obviously that causes a lot of confusion with consumers on social media when they like come see you and then they talk about products that they're using or something. And even recently, I keep getting bombarded by this ad on my Instagram, and it's these two women in like a field wearing a straw hat talking about how poisonous botulinum toxin is because it was used for warfare and that no one should get it and it creates blockages. And they're promoting some like skincare product that's made out of wheaten grass and how it will erase your wrinkles. And so when I see these things, I'm like, this is, it's incorrect. Like I don't think something made out of grass has no clinical studies behind it is going to improve fine lines and wrinkles. But consumers are, getting information and stuff like that from the internet and from social media. So how do you combat like objections or questions that you have with patients or even potential patients who come into your practice and they're struggling with all of this stuff that's floating on the internet and social media?
Right. So I think that we're dealing with a period of time where information is very easy to disseminate. We never used to have that. Like before, if someone had some kind of weird idea, they maybe could tell what a few people or their town or whatever, and it wouldn't go anywhere. And now, because of the internet and social media, misinformation can be rapidly spread. So this is an issue not only for aesthetics, but just in general. And the way that the misinformation is, the way that we combat it is with education. So we educate people, and we allow them to make these decisions. We have to say, okay, well, I'm going to give you this. This is the information that I know, and this is actually backed by research and clinical studies. And there's data that supports what I am saying. And this is the information as we know it. And I would welcome these other people. Let's see their paper. Let's see their study. What information do they have to back up their claim? So I think that that's what we have to do, is we have to continue with education, and we have to assume that given the proper education, that people will be able to decide which information is valid and which information is not valid. So yes, if there is a patient who does believe that that is the answer to their problems, and even with giving them proper information, then that's their decision, and that's something that I have to be okay with. But my job is to give people information that I feel is accurate, that I feel is based on science or research or some kind of validation, and then we go from there. So my primary goal, as you said, is to really educate people, and then an educated person can then make the decision for themselves about what is best. So that's what I do, is I try to educate people so they have some frame of reference to deal with this information, because information without education or some way to kind of categorize it or catalog it is very overwhelming and difficult. So I think that's really where education is so important.
I love it. And so, and just hearing you talk about it, and I love how you put it, but something I am also thinking of, and I know you would agree with me, is if we don't educate, I'm not a surgeon, but if our community of surgeons and providers and physicians and injectors, if we don't educate on social media, someone else will. And that
Right.
someone else could be people that once again are trying to promote, trying to line their own pockets and promote products that have zero clinical studies behind them, and are we all know, like us in the industry, we all know some product made out of whatever it is, grass and clay, is not going to improve your skin texture or
Right.
get rid of static lines on your forehead. So it's funny
Absolutely.
because I keep getting bombarded by the same ad, and I even screen recorded it because I'm like, I might use this in a social media presentation
Oh,
for
absolutely.
2020. Yeah, because I'm like, when I hear it and when I look at it, I'm like, this is crazy. And they're basically saying like Botox and fillers are going to be the breast implants of the next generation, basically saying that fillers and tucks are going to destroy everyone. And it's like that could not be more wrong. So it's just interesting to see this influx of incorrect information. So once again, I love that you said that that's your main job on social media, is just to educate, and you can do everything you can. And if the patient or the consumer that's sitting, in your treatment room or consultation doesn't want to, go down that path, and they want to use products that are being promoted by, some company or influencer, then all the more power to them. They'll probably be coming back in a couple of years when they realize none of that stuff worked.
Yeah.
So something else I wanted to ask you, and I guess today's theme is, I guess, kind of on marketing, branding, and then we'll move into PR because I like what we're discussing today. So something else I wanted to ask you is carving out the time to do it, because obviously time is having the time to create content, to film content, to edit content. It can be a lot on top of running a practice, on top of being the main provider and the surgeon and the injector. So how do you manage like putting time aside for it?
So I find that we have to put like blocks on the schedule. So we try to have in our office like a daily meeting, and during our daily meeting, we might go over what we're doing every day, and we'll also go over what we're posting on social media. So we do have like a touch point as to what we're doing and when we're doing it. And I think that's what the importance is having some consistency and a regularity, because most of business is just doing the same thing over and over again. It's not magical, but it's intentional, and it has to be done regularly. So it's not that we don't know these things. It's just like how many people really do these things like every single day. So the more regular you are and keep doing it, I think it's helpful. But I think we have to have like touch points. So we have like different meetings. We have might have some meetings that we go over what we're doing for the month or the quarter or the year, but we also do have some like daily meetings where we're making sure that we know who's coming in, if any of those people are people that would be willing to be on social media, and then just figuring out our schedule and what we're posting and because obviously you could try to set the schedule, but social media is also about what's happening now, or there could be some flexibility. So even though there could be something that's like set in the schedule, like we have like something, some idea, sometimes there is some shuffling that goes on or something comes up. So we want to be relevant and timely also.
Yeah. I love that. And going back to something you said, yeah, consistency is key. Totally agree with that. And I like that you said you block out your calendar. And that's something I suggest a lot of people to do as well, as because if you don't do that, you're going to keep procrastinating it or
You'll be like,
pushing it
oh,
aside.
that's not important, or I have this that's more important. When actually these are the things, doing those things consistently is the most important. There isn't something that's more important than that. That is what's going to keep your business or your practice on track, is that consistency, and the other stuff actually has to go around that.
Yeah. No, that's a great piece of advice, and I hope that's a takeaway everyone takes from this episode. And we can apply that to anything in life. Like, and this is something even I do too. Like, if I know I have a project or I'm writing an article or something, I will block out time from this time to this time. I'm going to do it, and you have no choice, and it forces you to do it. And the same concept is obviously applicable as it relates to social media in your practice as well. So something else I wanted to ask you, because you brought it up, is when you're having team meetings and you're talking about patients coming in and doing social media planning and stuff like that, you'll go through, okay, so these are the patients coming in. Which one of these patients would ideally do we think would consent to participating in social media? What do those conversations look like with the patient? Like, how do you get them to have, sign consent forms and things?
So on our intake forums, it has a question that asks them like, would you be interested in like being a part of one of our social media journeys? So we have like, so the options are yes, no, or tell me more. So we kind of know if the patient's really not interested, then that's not something that we push them to do. But people who are like yes or tell me more, then those are people that we ask, um, well, what do you, and some people are like, oh, yes, I want to be on your social media. I want to have my before and after there. And that's obviously great. Other people are like, yes, I would like to participate, but I don't want my face fully. So we have varying
Yeah.
degrees of what people are comfortable with. And that's kind of how we do it. So we have a written thing. So we're not don't have to directly
Yeah.
confront them so they don't feel uh, under pressure to do something. And then the people who seem interested, then we can ask them.
Yeah, definitely. And I'm curious, do you see trends of patient age ranges that are typically more okay with being on social media? Like, do you see trends and it's more like the younger patients or Gen Xers? I'm just curious what you're seeing.
Oh, I definitely think that the younger patients are much more interested in being on social media, because then they kind of feel like they're their own celebrity. They're like, oh, I'm on your Instagram, so people are looking at me or whatever. So we do have some older patients, but those tend to be people who either are really excited about their results, or they, for the same reason, they're really into social media and they like to see themselves um,
Yeah.
on the feed. So, but I would say overall, more it's the younger people who are more interested in and willing to show their journey or their results.
Yeah. I figured that that's what you would say, but I just wanted to hear because everyone's practice is different. But that's certainly what I hear in the industry too. And this is something I urge everyone to do is like with while we have this emergence of mostly millennials, they're around like 30+% of the market share now, which is 28 to 43. So it's a pretty wide range, but that generation is the only consumer group with full purchasing power that's continuing to grow. And they have a very unique nuance is that a lot of them are okay being on social media. And so I think that that's an opportunity, more practices need to prioritize, and then of course have the right processes in the intake forms. And in some cases too, even if someone says no at first, I've noticed in some cases, once a patient completes like a treatment plan or whatever
Yes.
it may be, and they get happy, then you can
Right.
ask the question again,
Yes.
and they might have a different answer.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
Cool.
Sometimes you could
That's
see if they're very, very excited about their result that you can say like, okay, is this, we love your result. You look fabulous. Is this something that you would be willing to share? And
yeah.
very often they will say yes.
Yes. And once again, more people need to realize that getting a no once doesn't mean that they won't say yes down the road.
Yeah,
So for some people, they
exactly.
need to see the results themselves.
Yeah,
Then they get so
absolutely.
excited that they want to share it and be on
Yeah.
Dr. Jen Levine's Instagram and stuff. And yeah, like you said, some of them are like, yeah, I want to, feel like a celebrity. And so that's something we can all capitalize on this industry because millennials are not going away. That market in aesthetics is just going to continue to grow because it's still a very underpenetrated consumer demographic. Something else I wanted to ask you as well, as because you have very good before and after photos on your Instagram. They're very consistent with consistent lighting, consistent backgrounds, and then you describe the treatment plan in a little
Yes.
bit more detail to set expectations. So talk a little bit about that because that's something I think a ton of practices struggle with.
So basically, I am very, very, the photographs are really, really important to me. So my staff all knows that. And if like the picture isn't good, then I make them take it again. So I am very, uh, because this is unfortunately, like, or fortunately, like this is a story that's told in photographs, and people who are interested in doing procedures want to see before and afters, and the before and afters have to be standardized. That's just a given, and I don't think that anyone should show unstandardized photographs. I mean, that's like the basics of aesthetics. So we need to take good before pictures, we need to take good after photos, and that's like the standard of care. So for me, that's like a non-negotiable. So yes, like that is what it is. And we take pictures of the patients at every visit and we show them their pictures. We show them their progress because this isn't about lighting. We're not trying to trick people. We're like, this is how you look. This is how you looked before. And we show them the photographs before we do any treatment because most of the time the patients don't know what they look like from the profile or the 3/4. They need to see what that looks like. And then we show them in the after photo as well. But that I think is very important, both for the process, both for patients themselves and for people who want to see what the results of the practice are. So yes, I'm very compulsive about the photographs.
That's a good thing though, and that's something, we all need to be perfectionists on, to be honest, is the photo process in a practice. And that's something that a lot of people still struggle with. And so I love that you're very particular about it because that is how it needs to be. Like it has to be like that because
Yeah,
you are
it
doing
has it has to be that way. And I there really is no, especially now. I mean, believe it or not, when I first had to learn how to take the pictures, we had to take them on film. So, and then you had to go develop them. So really you had to get them right the first time. But now with like digital images, there's no reason that you can't take, if you're not sure, take 10 images and you keep going, and it's like anything else, you have to practice and you have to have the right equipment. But if people have not invested or don't know how to take good pictures, then they need to learn because
yep.
there's really no excuse for not having good and accurate photography.
I totally agree. I totally agree. And it's funny to hear when you say you used to have to take them with film and then go develop it. Like that is so much work compared to how we are today. Every provider that's opening
Oh
up
my
today,
gosh, yeah.
you guys all have an advantage. Like we have iPhones, iPhone camera quality is
Right,
great. There are apps and
right.
tools out there such as RX Photos, my preferred one, just because it's so easy to use. But we have, thousands of clients that use that because it helps with the angles. And like, so it's an easy thing to do now compared to, 10 years ago. It was very, very different. And something else. So as it relates to photos, Is there do you ever get pushback from patients when you tell them that we need to take photos of you? Like, because some people get uncomfortable with their photos taking. I'm just wondering if you have like, if you ever get that or not too often in your practice.
Very, very rarely. I mean, honestly, it's like medical legally. If you're going to touch someone, you need to take the pictures. So it's almost the opposite. Like if I have someone who absolutely refuses photography, they have to sign a paper saying I've refused this because I've informed them that they need the pictures. And if they don't want them, then that's on them. But it's medical legally, we are required to, if especially if we're doing something that's going to impact their appearance, we need to document that. So I would say from a medical legal standpoint, that is not, you need to take the pictures. And number two is most people don't know how they look from the other angle. So you're doing them a disservice if you only give them a mirror, because people don't really know how they look and they don't know how they look from those different angles. And in order to get the right treatment plan, they really need to see those pictures. So that is like part of our process. And yes, I think that once you make it a part of your process, then it doesn't become weird anymore and people understand that that's important and
Yeah.
then they appreciate it.
Yeah. No, I so agree. And yeah, just like you said, you're doing them a disservice. And what you mentioned too is holding a mirror and look at yourself is very different than looking at photos of yourself. Like when I
Right.
look at myself in the mirror, we all think we look the same, right? But then, and my provider does this, who's a good friend and client of mine. When I go in, I just started doing the nutrient injections under the eyes from Promo Italia, the light eyes, and I have done three. And looking in the mirror, I wouldn't notice anything, but I just was in her office a couple days ago and I was going through my photos and I'm like, oh my gosh, like when you, for some reason, when you look at a photo, like it's
Right.
so much different.
Yes. Well, that's the purpose, is so that you can see your progress, because especially for something that's going to work over time, it's a little bit like watching paint dry. It's like you know it's happening, but you can't really see it, but you can see it if you look back on a picture. So it's very important to have the photographs.
Yeah. Yeah, it really is. And I love the direction that this has gone into. So I'm glad that we got really granular and specific with this, because obviously there's a million things we could have talked about, but I always like when we go in one direction. And I think there are so many good takeaways in this episode. So I know we have about 5 minutes left. So as we wind down, some other things I wanted to ask you about, because obviously, I can't believe it's already almost 2025, but this industry from an innovation standpoint, it's very exciting. There's so many new devices, injectables coming to the US market, and you see stuff globally because you obviously lecture globally and all of this stuff. So in terms of like future predictions or exciting things on the clinical standpoint from an innovation side of things, what are some things that you're particularly excited about?
Well, I really like the idea that we're going into this like era of like undetectable injectables or undetectable surgery, where we're having a result that really looks very natural and cohesive and doesn't look like you've been, touched. So I think we're moving to that as a trend. So that's like very I think that's overall like where we're going, and I think that's great. I think the idea that we are moving into this idea that regenerative medicine is very important, and that we're going to be using all these new different products, and we're going to be using them in combination with each other, and that like skin quality, skin texture, those things are really important, that we could probably like, and also like the energy based devices are really, really big. But I think that overall we're moving toward a I'm a surgeon, so obviously we see people doing things like mini facelifts, probably more than fillers in their lower part of the face, or even brow lifts, things like that. Um, we're moving to the area where we realize that surgical procedures may actually be better than some of the other procedures.
Mhm. Yeah, definitely. And just to echo that, I love that we're finally seeing like the trends of like the overfilled, unnatural looks going away, because those were here for a while, I feel like. And it's nice to see the industry move towards a more natural and regenerative approach as well. Well, and I know we have a couple minutes left, but one more question I have for you, two more questions actually. What are some of your favorite like because I assume you're already using some regenerative medicine in the practice. Are there any like go-to protocols that you absolutely love that have just changed the game for you?
Well, anytime we do a lot of laser stacking in our practice, so we're usually using multiple devices. So obviously, if we're going to be doing that, we want people to heal up quickly. So whether we're using exosomes or the salmon sperm or a combination of these or the low molecular weight HAs or a combination of these products to really promote healing, platelet derived growth factors, all these things to really maximize being able to get the maximum result from our treatments and also have our patients heal up as quickly as possible is kind of what we're seeing, because we probably are doing like a bunch of treatments at once and then we want them to heal up quickly. So that's really where the regenerative medicine also comes in really strongly.
Yeah, no, I love that. And yeah, exosomes, if someone's offering exosomes, obviously it increases the cost of the treatment. But once again, if you use, even photos can be used in this case too, is you can heal a lot faster and things like that and enhance the clinical outcome. So as a patient,
Yeah.
if I'm, and anytime I do a laser treatment, I always do exosomes post, because I've noticed, I've compared it. I even compared like doing it without and doing it with, and my recovery time is so much faster, like
That's
well
right.
over a week faster with exosomes. So I love that our industry is moving in that direction. And then as we wind down here, because I know we have 2 minutes left, we could probably talk for another 4 hours. Obviously, okay, so end of the year, what's next for you? Any exciting places you'll be, conferences you'll be speaking at? What is next for the amazing Dr. Jen
Yeah,
Levine?
so we're both going to be going to MCAS, which is like the grand dame of like aesthetic conferences in Paris. I think 18,000 people went there
Yep.
last year. So we're going to be in that, right? So we'll be
Yes.
seeing what the other worldwide trends are going to be, and really what's new and what's next, and what the world is talking about, and how we're going to deal with. Obviously now we have all the people in the GLP-1 agonists, so everyone's getting skinny, and that doesn't make the tissue actually look as good. So
Yep.
combating these changes and having people not look sunken, but rather healthy and soft and glowy, I think that's what we're going into.
Yeah. Yeah, I love it. And I'm very excited for MCAS Paris. Yeah, myself, Sheila Barbarino, and Jen Levine will all be headed out there together. Jen and I will be speaking for MERS. I have some other things I'll be doing, and we're going to have a great time. Maybe we'll get you to do a funny reel with us, Jen.
Oh yeah, we'll have to
We're
try.
there.
I don't know. Yeah, maybe I could be right. You'll have to give me a lot of coaching.
Maybe something simple and short.
Is this
I
gonna be?
texted something. I
Was this
texted
a
something to
reasonable? That's something you and Sheila would do that.
yeah, I texted something to
You're gonna have
Sheila
to
the other day.
orchestrate. Yeah, yeah.
We will see. But yeah, very excited. So whoever is going to MCAS Paris, it's one of my favorite events of the year, just because your eyes are open to so many other things, and you see how other markets are doing aesthetic medicine, which a lot of markets are well ahead of the United States. So it's a conference I certainly enjoy, and I'm very excited to be taken on Paris with both you and
Yeah,
Dr. Barbarino, and I can't wait to see you
yeah.
in, I guess, two
We'll be
months.
like, I guess we could do like a version of like the Three Musketeers or something.
Yes, yes, definitely. We'll definitely pump out some fun
Well,
content. We
well,
will be,
you guys could think about like fun trios. I'm sure there's a lot.
yes, yes. We're gonna do some real
Thank you so much.
research
Okay,
to make it fun. So
excellent.
okay, can't
All right.
believe it's been an hour. Jen,
Yeah.
thank you so much for
Thank
carving out
you
the
so
time.
much
I know
for
how
having
busy
me,
you
Audrey.
are.
This was great.
Thank you
Okay.
so much. So have an awesome day. And
You
I
too.
hope all of you all get a lot out of this episode, because I know I did. So thank you once again, Jen. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you, Audrey. Bye.